Hi, I'm going to take a look at the game that took place between two very famous players, between Aronian and Nakamura in 2020. The game took place on web chess, on Lichess website. This is a very known site, and the players are also very known. Aronian is known, and Nakamura is even more known. He's one probably the highest bullet and blitz player in the world in online chess on online chess websites, and overall very known chess player. Aronian plays d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3. Sometimes white just doesn't want to allow the following pin in Nimzo-Indian, and sometimes white plays knight f3 in order not to allow the pin. But of course knight c3 is a very known option. Black can play d5 now if he wants to, or black can continue bishop b4, which is kind of I think that bishop b4 is a bit is a tiny bit stronger than d5. If black plays d5, it's just an ordinary queen queen gambit, and bishop b4 is Nimzo-Indian. It seems to me that in bishop b4 black is more kind of black feels kind of less pressure on the position, and there are a bit more options. So I just think that bishop b4 is kind of a more natural move to play in this position. e3, white can play e3, or white can play knight f3. Just or white can play a3, castle, bishop d3, c5. Well, it seems to me, of course, the position is very known, and kind of playing c5 and then playing d5, and to play c5, then to play d5, then capture on c4 is a known way to act. Maybe there is a move b6 in this situation. I'm not sure, but maybe if I play b6, then there is queen f3. It's something to be to consider. This move is something to be kind of reckoned with. Queen f3 is well, obviously white wants to capture rook on a8, and so essentially black has to play something like c6, or black has to play something like d5, and probably there are no other ways, no other moves. Oops, I see now that the board does not look great. Why is that? One moment, trying to adjust the board so the board goes back. Yep, looks better now. Okay, let's get back to business with the situation after queen f3. So b6, queen f3, kind of better just to play c5. I don't know if this is very good, but queen f3 looks quite kind of interesting. For example, d5, and then white has to play knight g to e2, and this queen on f3 kind of doesn't look bad to me. I can play something like not king. Sometimes I just sometimes the word king and knight confuse me. Of course, it was knight. Knight to e2, knight to e2. Maybe black plays bishop to b7 now. Maybe a castle. Okay, so we distracted from the game, but the situation is just interesting. If black captures on c4, bishop b7, c captures on d3, queen a8. What's about material? Black has 7 pawns, black has 8 pawns. Okay, so we capture on e2, and just white captures on e2. This is a possible variation, and black is down in exchange. There is a knight against rook. There are 7 pawns to both sides. Black has 7 pawns, white has 7 pawns. So each side has 7 pawns, but knight against knight, bishop against bishop, queen against queen, rook against rook, and there is knight against rook. So it's so the situation is essentially black is down material and there is not enough compensation. So for it, so this d captures on c4 doesn't is probably just a losing move, because black doesn't get enough compensation for the sacrifice that it's going to make. Okay, we're kind of really distracted from the game. Let's get back to the game. We are back at move 5, bishop d3, c5, knight g2, e2, d5, c captures d5. Well, essentially black wants to develop the pieces to play b6, and maybe there is a standard maneuver in this position. D captures on c4, bishop captures on c4, c captures on d4, knight captures on d4, and then queen goes to c7, attacking the bishop on c4. C captures on d5, so this maneuver is just not going to take place in this game, because that's something totally different. But if white played, for example, something like a castle, so maybe it was an option to capture on c4, bishop captures on c4, c captures on d4, knight captures on d4, queen c7, bishop d3, bishop c3. I think that it seems to me that this move seems quite logical to me, because kind of maybe black is even going to win a pawn. Bishop captures on c3, queen, and maybe queen c3 kind of looks a bit risky for black. After rook b1, it seems to me that after rook b1, black probably has some compensation. No, white has some compensation. Well, white, I think that white is okay here. White has a good compensation in this situation. After bishop b2, there are 2 bishops. There is attack. There is a potential for development of the queen, and it seems to me that white should be okay. But there is e5. There is move e5. But still, bishop b2, despite this attacking continuation. Queen is attacked, and queen has to go back. Queen a5. and maybe there is now white has to decide what to do with its knight, and there are no intermediate moves, like there is no way to attack a queen. White has to probably has to play knight f5 or knight b3 or knight b5, and maybe knight b5 seems like a good option. But so in this situation, it seems that there is good compensation for the pawn. Okay, let's go back. d5, c captures on d5, c captures on d4. Nakamura doesn't capture on d5. Nakamura captures on instead on d4, and he captures on d4. Now there is no other way. Another way to continue is to play knight, is to capture on d4 with a knight. But a capture with a pawn is more natural, because there is a problem, a potential problem with bishop c1, and it's good to make way for this bishop. The bishop has to. I wouldn't want to have bishop c1 stuck, and after knight d4 the bishop would be stuck. Capture on d4. Nakamura captures with the knight. Another move would be to capture with the pawn, and if Nakamura captured with the pawn, then there is bishop g5, and and the spin is unpleasant. Maybe knight c6. Black want to finish the development of the pieces. There is castle. Bishop g4. White is better because of this spin. This spin is something that should better be avoided. So Nakamura captured on d5 with the knight. Queen c2. Essentially, white has no problems in these positions. The development is finished, and I would prefer playing white in this situation, because essentially there are two good bishops. The development of the pieces is finished, and black has an undeveloped bishop c8. Queen c2, immediately attacking h7 pawn. So how to react to this move? There is a pawn attacked, and g6 or h6 are good moves, but still black's position is not very comfortable. For example, after g6 there is an option for white to play h4, and there is an attack. h6. Okay, h6, castle, knight c6, rook d1, rook d1. There is currently a pawn on d4, but Aronian maybe thinks just that. Still, a d1 is a pretty good place for the rook. Is a pretty good place for the rook. Bishop d6. There is a threat to play to b4 with a knight. Knight d into b4 or knight c to b4. So a3 seems like a must play move. No, this is not a3, this is something totally different. Aronian plays bishop h7, king h7, and now bishop e4. Okay, so instead of playing a3, Aronian improved the position of its bishop, and it attacked a knight on d5, but it's not an attack because knight d5, e takes d5, bishop d5, bishop h2, king h2, queen d5, which seems totally alright, and now the bishop c8, which is now in pretty sad situation, becomes a much more powerful piece. Knight c2, e7, but still Nakamura defends knight d5, bishop d2, bishop d7, queen c1. There is a threat of bishop captures h6, gh6, queen h6, king g8, and queen h7 checkmate. These bishops are good. The bishops are good. So okay, there is this threat. How black can defend in this situation? What Nakamura should do? Just to ignore to play rook c8 isn't good, because there is just a capture on h6, and it really just seems bad for black. Oh, okay, Nakamura defends with king g8. Well, not really, kind of not a very easy move to find. I don't know if there were any other moves to play, and any other defenses. Maybe not. Maybe, okay, there is a move knight g8, but then a pawn on d5 is hanging. So king g8, so now a capture on h6 is without a check. It's probably still gives white pretty decent attack, because there is this rook d1, which can enter the attack through d3, rook d1 to d3 to h3. It might be a good attack. Now, so I still would consider bishop h6. Okay, that there is something that was played in the game. There's something that was played in the game, and if now capture on g6 that wasn't played, queen h6, all kind of threats, and there is a threat of checkmate, and the rook can enter the game. Well, looks pretty dangerous to black. How to defend against this? Okay, if f5, queen g5, and if king f7, because king h8 is going to be met with rook d3, king h7. Well, f5 seems like a powerful defense. King f7. Maybe it's already good to be satisfied with the draw for white. Knight d5, e captures d5, queen h5, maybe king e6. So okay, so instead of if white wanted to draw, so maybe now white should give a check in this situation. Queen h5, king f6, queen h6, king f7, queen h7. Oh, queen h5. Maybe it's a draw. Okay, so f5 does look decent. So it was a possibility to capture on h6. Bishop h6, knight c3. Instead, Nakamura captured on c3, knight c3, knight c3, bishop capture on h6 now, queen h6, maybe now f5. f5 now is played by Nakamura. So there is a definitely white has a compensation, but it's not very. It's not, the position isn't very clear. d5. Aronian continues d5. Capture on e4. Queen g5. King h7. Knight e4. Capture on d5. Knight d6. Knight g6. Now white has 5 pawns and black has 3 pawns, and pawn d5 could go down now after queen d5. I don't think that it's not recommended to exchange queens, because black skin is much more open than white skin. So queen d8, rook d8, rook d5 doesn't make as much sense as just queen d5, because the king is open. Queen h5. So white continues with the attack and has a good compensation, but black also has pretty good kind of good pieces, so the position isn't very clear. King g7, rook d5, queen f6, knight e4, queen e7, knight g3, queen f7, f3, bishop e6, rook d6, rook a to d8. Now rook a to d1 is the most natural move, because black doesn't want just white doesn't want just to give a d file to black. It is the most natural move. And okay, rook a to d1, queen c7, knight to e4, rook d6, rook d6, queen to c1. Aronian allowed black's Nakamura queen to the first rank. Now there is only one move, because rook d1 is not an option. So strictly speaking, there are 2 moves, but only one is seriously considered, and this move is king to f2, then queen b2 would follow, king to g3, and the situation is and there is a maybe there is queen g2, king g2, knight f4, but then at the end black captures on e6, so it's not a variation. So okay, king f2 now, queen b2, king g3. Black has 2 pawns for the bishop, not a lot, but there is attack. So just king f2, and just to see what happens. King f2, queen b2, king g. Naka doesn't play king to g3. Instead, Naka plays rook to d2, which is more natural. But king to g3 is another option. King g3, knight f4, queen g5. King to knight to g5. Okay, rook d2, queen b4, queen c5, exchange of the queens, so there is an endgame. After the queens exchanged, it's just it becomes clearer. There are 2 pawns. Black has 2 pawns, and black has an advantage in this situation, a serious advantage. Of course, white also has some chances, but it's black who is going to play for the win. Who should be playing for the win. And also, what is important is that bishop can play on 2 sides better than a knight. And now, if black exchanges the rook in this situation, it's going to become a pretty dire, pretty bad situation for white. Bishop c8. White has to advance the pawns on the king side, and black has to kind of advance the pawns on the queen side. King g3, knight e7, king f2, b6, knight e4, bishop e6, h4, bishop d5, knight c3, bishop c6, knight e2, rook h8, g3, king f7, knight f4, b5, h5, a5, g4, b4, g5, a4, rook d4, rook to b8, knight d3, b3, he captures b3. Well, black advanced its pawns on the queen side, and maybe there is now a3. No, a3 is met just with knight c1. So a captures b3, and now there is a move bishop to d5, and then there is a threat rook c8, rook c8, rook c2, and rook a8, rook a2. Bishop d5, rook f4, king g7, king e3. Rook c8 seems seems to make sense. Instead, Nakamura plays rook to h8, h6, king g8, rook g4. Okay, and if instead he played rook c8 with the threat of rook c2, maybe rook d4, rook c2, rook d2. Can it be? Well, the situation is kind of, if there is an exchange of rooks, then white is very close to draw, extremely close to draw. It only has to capture the pawn with a knight. It seems pretty close. Oh, it seems it is a draw. Rook h8. Instead, Nakamura played rook h8, king g6, rook g4, rook e8, f4, knight f5. So instead of he blocked the pawns and improved the position of his pieces. King d3, rook d8, rook g8, bishop f7, king c3, rook c8, king b4, knight e3, knight d3, knight d5, king b5, bishop e7, king h6, b2, Okay, so what is this move b2? If knight captures b2, then it seems like, okay, there is a checkmate in. There is a checkmate. There should be a checkmate after bishop c6. Knight knight b2, bishop c6. There is a threat of rook a8, f5, king takes f5, rook f1. Although maybe there is a couple of checks. King g5, rook g1, king h6. So the checkmated threats are really serious. But the position is lost. White's position is lost. Bishop b5. It's beautiful. King b5 now. King b5. Knight c3. King a6. King knight b1. Knight b2. Okay, it's winning. Capture on b5. Knight c3. King b4. Knight b1. Knight b2. And rook b8, and it's beautiful that now there is a capture on b2 because both squares a3 and c3 are controlled by the knight. So Nakamura won this game. Interesting game, and he defended in this against this attack, against the sacrifice on h6. There was a situation after sacrifice on h6. It's kind of looked dangerous, but Nakamura defended well. Okay, so he won. Thanks for watching.